I hate to be the one to break this to you, but automobiles are not human. They have no lineage or personality.
I wonder why I keep forgetting that.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to From the Frame Up, the podcast that we use through traffic to give you the most important topics in the automotive industry. I am your host, Jared Jones, and thank you so much for joining us for our fourth episode of the season. In this episode, we get to speak to Chief Technical Officer of the Automotive Parts Manufacturing Association, Colin Singh Dhillon, about one of the coolest manufacturing projects taking place in North America today, Project Arrow. Colin gives us an inside look at the project, as well as who they're collaborating with to get it off the ground. Before we get into the episode, some housekeeping. From the Frame Up is the property of CSN Collision Centers. I'm the Marketing and Communications Specialist at CSN Collision Centers, which is a network of more than 200 collision, auto body, paint, and glass repair facilities located across Canada. Using outstanding customer service and high-quality repairs, CSN Collision Centers safely repair more than 200,000 vehicles per year, helping Canadians get back on the road with the trust and confidence that their vehicles have been repaired to like-new condition the first time. Visit csncollision.com for more details. CSN Collision Centers will straighten it out. Okay, now that the housekeeping's out of the way, all that corporate messaging is done, let's get into the episode. Bear with me, there are some video issues, but it's on my side, not on Colin's, and you're not going to want to miss what he has to say. Episode 4 of From the Frame Up, Inside Project Arrow. Enjoy. Colin, thanks for coming on.
Jared, thanks for inviting me. Looking forward to chatting all things cars.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely excited to have you on today. I think two car guys for the first time on our podcast, which is going to be interesting. We'll try not to do too much fanboying over our favorite automakers or our favorite vehicles. Give the people a little bit of a background on who you are and what you do. How'd you get at the APMA?
Well, I'm what I call myself. I'm a designer that went wrong. I graduated, born and brought up in the UK, graduated from design, came over, worked in consumer goods, worked in the medical sector, went back to the UK, did some more education, came over planning on teaching, and I actually started teaching part-time at Humber College, and at the same time started working for an automotive Canadian Tier 1 supplier back in 1999. And I spent just under 20 years with that company, ABC Group, who are now known as ABC Technologies. And just prior to me leaving, I started as a packaging designer working in one of their plants. And I left 19 years later running their design studio, running their marketing department, running corporate social responsibility and their R&D, global R&D. And then I had an opportunity to join the Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association, which is the nationwide association that takes care of the auto parts companies in Canada, to come on and help lead the connected and autonomous vehicle initiatives in the province. Wow,
so a really light CV or resume for you. I mean, not much of a background in terms of places you've been and responsibilities you've held. So I definitely appreciate a rookie like you coming on here and talking to us.
Hey, listen, I've been fortunate to kind of be on this journey with regards to, pun intended, with regards to where my career has been going. And for no little reason, Jared, I've actually been pushing it as well. So things don't necessarily happen by accidents or coincidence. There's been a lot of strategic, thought and hard work that's gone into to where I wanted to go. So, I'm not stopping yet, by the way.
That's awesome. Good to hear. I love to hear that you're still hungry, still have the drive. So, with a resume like yours, with a background like yours, how is it that you end up at the Automotive Parts Manufacturing Association? Like, what brought you there? Was it a direction that you wanted to take your career? Was it kind of an intersection of timing and opportunity? How did you end up there specifically?
It's a great question. So the Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association was founded, 67, 68 years ago. and it is the voice for the auto kind of sector, the parts manufacturers. When we're talking lobbying, and when we're talking to try and make sure that any rules and regulations and policies are favourable to our members. Our members have been changing somewhat over the past decade. You have got companies that are coming in and trying to sell electrons and semiconductors and write software as opposed to making parts out of metallics and plastics. And the APMA has always been, over the past few years, very good at recognizing changes in our sector. And our sector, like many others, Jared, in the manufacturing world, are going through some major upheaval as they embrace digital manufacturing. And so there was an opportunity for the APMA to step up and be a part of this program led by the province called AVEN, the Autonomous Vehicle Innovation Network, and its demonstration zone. And they needed somebody to come on to help lead the demonstration zone, where we bring in a vehicle, add technology to that vehicle, and that technology could be connected technology, autonomous vehicle technology. And then we demonstrate it. We demonstrate it throughout North America. And so for me, it was reading the tea leaves, I would say, and understanding where the sector was going. And so for me to be able to transition from being a designer to working in advanced product development and then being able to move towards technology, I felt it was going to be key in order for me to kind of, move forward.
Yeah, that's excellent. I mean, it's such a fascinating kind of attractor, so to speak, to what kind of brought you there is this really kind of forward-thinking, innovative approach to kind of tech as it pertains to the automotive sector. And I think that's kind of what we try to uncover as collision repairers. We believe that we're on the forefront of technology when it comes to how to repair the vehicle as well. So I just think that it's such an interesting kind of intersection of kind of what we're doing in terms of trying to highlight the importance of having the right repair done to vehicles that have that modern technology, and kind of what you guys are doing when it comes to actually implementing it and building and speccing out what technology is going to end up going into that vehicle, especially in the new kind of the new space that we're living in. Is everybody wants autonomous. So maybe that's the first, maybe not the first place. The second place I'll kind of go is autonomous vehicles. What's your kind of your take or your perspective on where that's going, generally speaking?
One of the attractions for what we're going to be seeing in the next decade, for me, has been and continues to be autonomous. And just so everybody is aware, there are 5 levels of autonomy. 0 being, I always describe it as a Model T, something that you literally need a crank at the front to get it going. And 5 being, there is no pedals or a steering wheel inside that environment, and you literally are being transferred. And by the way, 4 and 5, the only difference between 4 and 5 is the technology is exactly the same. 4 has a pedal and a steering wheel, pedals and a steering wheel. 5 doesn't. And so, when you hear of level 3, which Honda came out last week or the week before and announced that they have achieved level 3, Tesla's kind of said they're at level 2 plus level 3. And so, we're only a few years away, and it's exciting. But I was asked to write an article when I first joined the APMA, and I titled it "Smart Car, Dumb Infrastructure." Because everyone around me was saying, "When are we going to see these smart cars?" And I'm like, "Well, not until we have dumb infrastructure, i.e., your autonomous technology, Jared, is only as good as the technology that is going to be embedded into the infrastructure, into the roads, on buildings, wearable tech you and I are wearing as pedestrians." And so until we have that complete ecosystem completed, yes, we'll be able to get to a level 4 probably within the next 3 to 4 years. But you're not going to see many of them on the road. You may see them in test beds, or you may see them in China or in places like Singapore. But I don't think you're going to be kind of, being run over by one in Toronto anytime soon.
Right. Well, hopefully never run over by one. But I totally get where you're going with it. Right? Is that it's only as good as the mass market can support. So if you've got a level 3 or a level 4 vehicle, well, you can't put it on the road. I'm still driving a 20-year-old Nissan Maxima. right? So there's not a whole lot of value or kind of support with the infrastructure today if you don't have a critical mass of users using the same vehicle, right, or using the same type of vehicle with the same level of technology, right? So putting a vehicle that's got platinum level technology next to one that's still running on coal, using my vehicle as an example, there's not as much value in the overall tech, and I totally agree with what you're saying.
And at the beginning of the 2000s, when the real push towards autonomous started, the reason we're going towards autonomous is 94% of all accidents are human error. Coming from the collision kind of sector of the world, that is where it is. And so the objective of bringing autonomous is to reduce that. That simply is the outcome and the objective always. And you're right. Listen, I live in Caledon, north of the airport, and we may have zones within Caledon and our hills where I don't get 5G and I don't get 4G, I don't get Wi-Fi. And so what good is an autonomous vehicle that loses connectivity?
Right.
So you've got to update the infrastructure in order for you to have these toys, to be honest.
Yeah, that's very well said, and I want to pull on just something that you mentioned there. We are in collision repair, and it can be a difficult topic to kind of talk about when we say from our perspective, we depend, as independent business owners and small to medium sized business owners, we do depend on a level of work in order for us to sustain our businesses, to keep our staff employed, and that's a result of collisions. And as you just mentioned, for the most part, collisions are human error. And so if you're introducing an autonomous vehicle that helps minimize that human error, what you're talking about is ultimately a decrease in frequency of collisions. And so as collision repairs, somebody that works for a collision repair network, help me ease the anxiety of some of our owners, as some of the people that work within the collision industry. What does the kind of the advent or the uptake of autonomous vehicles, hopefully the decrease in frequency of collisions, mean for people that work in the collision repair industry, from your perspective?
Well, first of all, let's say within the next 3 to 4 years, we're at level 4 autonomous. So we've achieved it. I think the next phase you'll see is the KPMG did a report back in 2017 called the Islands of Autonomy. And they predict that when we start to see autonomous vehicles, it's going to be in these downtown cores. So downtown New York, downtown Toronto, downtown Chicago. They'll choose a mile radius or a 5 kilometer radius, whatever that radius, they choose. But they will literally say only autonomous vehicles are going to be allowed in that zone. And so you're going to see that, probably for about, half a decade to a decade. So now we're 15 plus years away. And before you see it bleeding out, because the reality is look, we've all heard of 5G, and I'm sure many heard that it was somehow, behind COVID, which was absolutely absurd. But 5G and 4G, it's not as simple as just going, okay, let's go to our 4G LTE towers and put 5G technology on. No, the gap between two 4G towers will probably require about an additional 3 to 5 sub towers to give you full 5G. So now there's an infrastructure cost. And so do you get what I mean? So now if that's on you as a municipality, you're not going to be jumping and rushing to it. Brampton and Mississauga may do it quicker than Caledon just because they've got the budgets. So now we're 15 years out. Accidents are definitely going to be reduced. That's the whole intent for vehicle-to-vehicle communication. The vehicle's communicating not only with the vehicle in front, but the vehicle behind it and every vehicle around it. And so, we do predict that collisions will definitely be drastically reduced. They're still going to happen. The materials that our vehicles today weigh thousands of kilograms. So the weight of a vehicle is going to be drastically reduced, and the material. So you may see some more of these cosmetic. We've moved to aluminium or aluminum, I should say. You're going to go and see more magnesium, and then you may even see composites and polymers being used in vehicles. Inevitably, not all jurisdictions are going to go autonomous. I don't predict. Listen, I've hit a milestone in my age. I'm over 50 now, And I probably will expect to see regular vehicles. Internal combustion engines aren't being, cancelled by nations until at least 2035, 2040. And so, after 2050, definitely, I think there will be a reduction with artificial intelligence being an integral part of the autonomous vehicles. You will start to see it, but are we going to go from 94% down to 4%? In the next few decades? I don't think so. I think it may be down to 80 or 70 if we're lucky.
Right. And that makes total sense, right? It's not a situation where it's a light switch. Okay, now somebody's at level 3 or truly level 3 or level 4 or above. And so now that means that everybody is. Like we kind of alluded to before, there needs to be a critical mass for there to be any real value. So I think that does appease, some of the people that depend on the idea of collision repair and auto body repair, to make a living. It probably, eases some of their anxiety for sure. So I appreciate that. I do want to touch on something that you mentioned. It was kind of tongue in cheek. Some people thought that 5G was responsible for COVID. Okay, let's ignore the 5G part of that, but maybe let's talk a little bit about the pandemic. There's been such an influx in the importance of having a good digital strategy, the importance of maintaining supply chains. All those kinds of things were drastically affected during the pandemic. What was the APMA's kind of strategy or outlook or approach to the pandemic, and how have you guys been able to kind of maintain your importance to the industry itself, and talk to me a little bit about what went into that strategy, if you could.
Well, we just celebrated, I think, our 1-year anniversary of when my president, the president of the APMA, Flavio Volpe, did a social media call out to say to our members, if we can look at retooling to start building PPEs, because of the way supply chains work, Jared, I'm sure, you and I and our listeners and viewers appreciate that a lot of things are made in the East because the cost of making them are so much cheaper. A lot of auto parts were being made in Mexico prior to, NAFTA 2.0, because things were so much more cheaper. And when suddenly the world was shutting down supply chains, and suddenly now we're going from 6 weeks to see, PPEs to potentially 3 months, 4 months, depending on when a country like China was able to release them. We're all, facing the worst. And so, the auto sector did step up. Our members did step up. Companies that were making plastic and metallic parts suddenly started making face shields, face masks, gowns, you name it, parts for ventilators. It was a phenomenal kind of period from, March all the way through to about August, as just, more and more work was done. But as we're going through COVID, we are essential as far as essential workers. Most of our manufacturing facilities have been open. There have been some challenges for the past year at the border when it comes to crossing, because the naivety to think a vehicle made in Oakville by Ford gets assembled and then sent to the US, and that is it. It is naivety. The fact is the parts that go into a vehicle assembled in Oakville probably cross the border back and forth, a number of times. And so, there have been challenges at the border, but I think we're all now seeing the lights at the end of the tunnel. And I think as history kind of looks back at the APMA, we've already been asked, by the way, by places like Western University to do a white paper report on the work the APMA did as a case study for their executive MBA students. Because I think history will look back and say, yes, they stepped up and our auto sector stepped up. But also, answering your question, it also identified a gap in our supply chain. So to say, we need to bring a percentage of that back here. Listen, it's naive to say we need to bring all of it back. No. But a percentage of whatever you're planning on making in, say, the Far East should be made here in Canada, because, this may be the first of many of these epidemics.
Yeah, for sure. I love the point that you made at the end there, is that everybody kind of stopped when this all happened and started to take a very hard and fast look at their numbers, right? And that goes across all industries, government included. And I think that you're absolutely right. It made them stop and think, what percentage of this do we need to transition domestically so that we can support ourselves if this does happen again, right? And I think everybody kind of snapped to action when it came to that, automakers included. So that's a fantastic answer. I want to stick on the topic of the pandemic for a brief minute, if I could. The APMA has a program that recognizes and supports small to medium-sized businesses directly in the supply chain. Can you talk a little bit about is it OAMP or is it OAMP, and what that program is designed to do?
Yeah, it is kind of, we call it OAMP, and so there are a number of programs from DLAMP, as he absolutely crashes that one, digital learning platform. You've got the AVEN program, you've got OAMP. So there are several being run, most of them being funded by the province, and OAMP is about providing our sector, the automotive parts manufacturing sector, with an opportunity to be able to offset some of the costs to hire a co-op student or a recent graduate. Again, it's twofold. There's a benefit for the company, and there's obviously a benefit for the student / new employee. So it helps. It's a very attractive program, and there's also programs to help with the digitization and the advanced manufacturing of our sector as well. So, a company has a piece of equipment that's 30 years old, and Jared, it works as well as it needs to work. Like, why do I need to upgrade it? Why do I need to add new features to it? And so the one thing that we have realized is that data, you've heard about data is the new oil, data mining, data gold, blah, blah, blah. The fact is there is a huge value on your data. So, for example, in the plastics polymer world, a machine that runs in mid-August could have a completely different cycle time to the way it runs in mid-December in the same facility in Ontario. And so rather than having Jared, who's the expert, he's got to change the adjustments on the thermostat and on the cycle time, why not use data to make those automatic? Because maybe Jared's moved on, maybe he's taken a job elsewhere, and suddenly your cycle times, you're wasting a few precious seconds. And so adding additional equipment to legacy machines is something that we're trying to promote as well at the Automotive Parts Manufacturing Association, to say the next phase that we're already in is the digital manufacturing phase, the industry 4.0, another catchphrase, keyword that people hear about. But what do we need to do to make sure we're on it? Because the reason you've got to embrace this is because if you don't, there's a pretty good chance somebody's going to come and offer that service with all that data to a customer of yours, and you suddenly lose out.
Yeah, no, that's so well said, right? It modernizing without necessarily ripping the whole thing out. Trying to find ways that subtle incremental changes that you can make using data to power it is exactly what I think a lot of our audience and a lot of our listeners probably want to hear. Right. It doesn't mean that I need to go out and buy an entirely new piece of equipment and throw the old one out. There's ways that I can add on, right? I can use some of the information at my fingertips to help get me to the next step, for the short term. So that's fantastic. We in our previous, sorry, you're gonna jump in there. Go for it.
No, I was gonna say, that is key, and there are multiple companies in the GTA and in Southern Ontario that can provide equipment for legacy machines. So if you have a machine and you want to suddenly upgrade it, so there is some data being collected, there are multiple companies. I'm sure a simple Google would help.
That's excellent. That's a really good point. Well, maybe in the after effects, I'll drop a link to one of those websites. In our past episode, I talked to a friend of mine who works at a talent agency, a talent recruiting agency, and we talked about something that's kind of been seems like an evergreen challenge for the automotive industry is recruiting talent, right? And trying to find young, engaged kind of students that want to transition into career professionals in the automotive space. There's a ton of programs that are out there. I did some research, and I was curious if you could comment a little bit on the Career Ready Fund and what the APMA is doing with that particular program to help kind of bring some young and energetic and enthusiastic talent into the automotive space?
So it's similar to how OAM kind of focuses on, bringing in kind of, smart digital technology startups into a major company. The Career Ready Fund is really focused about, listen, co-ops and summer terms and new hirees has been an integral part of our sector for decades. It's nothing new. But when a government can step up and say, we'll cover a percentage of that overall cost, it suddenly makes it that much more attractive. I.e., if a company was good to hire 2, they may be able to hire 3 individuals or 4. And looping them back to this kind of digital manufacturing, one of the examples we've been giving to some of the members is, if you don't think you have the staff to be able to help with the transition to digitization, embracing cybersecurity or some of those newer techs and terminologies, then maybe bring on a team of these new students, new hirees or students who are in their 3rd or 4th year of study, to do it as a project. And so bring them on and they run and manage that project, and then they provide the findings to the rest of the company. We're blessed to have so many top quality academic institutions to choose from, all the way, let's say, from McGill down to, the University of Windsor. There is a lot of talent just in the, in the 2 provinces of Quebec and Ontario for us to be able to choose from. So, and there's been talk of a brain drain for decades as well, Jared, people going south of the border. But the beauty is we feel we're able to retain more of that talent here over the past few years than ever.
That's fantastic. I love the design of that program. I love the hands-on aspect to it. Engaging young people and kind of letting them do their own thing and own a project from kind of from start to finish, and then being able to report back and having some level of accountability and responsibility for something that they can contribute to and be proud of is such a good way to get them to be involved and to be engaged in the industry going forward. I think that digital marketing is one thing. But being able just to generally market to young people is such an important thing, regardless of the industry that you're in. And so, I really I commend the APMA for engaging and trying to get young people at our post-secondary institutions across the province and across the country to get into automotive, because it is a cutting edge, kind of technologically advanced space to be in, where automotive is on the forefront of what the next kind of like you talked about industry 4.0, or by the time this is cut and edited, maybe it's 4.1. But I just think that's such an interesting topic. I appreciate your response to that. Is there, you kind of talked about projects and you talked about help from government, natural segue. Talk to me a little bit about the big project that the APMA has been working on. What is Project Arrow?
Well, Project Arrow is the accumulation of multiple years of demonstrating or helping members demonstrate their technology to tier 1s or to OEMs, the car manufacturers. Back in December of 2019, we sat down and we said, how about developing Canada's first zero-emission concept vehicle? Knowing we're a trade association, knowing that no other trade association globally had ever attempted something like this. But we had a few tricks up our sleeve, and we said, it's something we've got to, at least see if there's a need or a want from Canada. And, the objectives, Jared, are to really showcase the best of Canada's capabilities. We know EVs or zero-emission vehicles are the next thing. So, again, take it back to the announcement was on the 7th of January, 2020 at CES, when things were still fairly normal. That is where we launched Project Arrow. And we've launched it unbeknownst to us that we were going to suddenly have Ford and General Motors and Stellantis FCA make announcements of building electric vehicles in Ontario, in Canada. But our hope that a project like Project Arrow would actually drive companies to look at Canada, because we were about to highlight the supply chain. We were about to highlight our capabilities, all the way from the academic institutions that came together to be a part of the design competition. So we held the design competition, had over 20 entries that were shortlisted down to 9. And then from the 9, they were shortlisted to the 3 finalists. And then we chose the winning group out of Carleton University. Phase 3, there are 4 phases in Project Arrow. Phase 3, I'll jump from phase 2 to 3. Phase 3 has been completed. The Windsor Economic Development Region there and IBLS and their VR cave have just completed the VR, the immersive technology portion of the project. Phase 2 is the tough phase where we actually try and build the vehicle. We've got some huge announcements coming over the next few days, if not weeks. We've been able to pull a stellar team together. We've got individuals from some major global OEMs that have joined to be a part of our chief engineer and our engineering teams. Marcelo Grassi is the ex-CTO of McLaren, who's the chair of the advisory board for Project Arrow. So we're pulling these individuals because they also see and they have a belief in the project we're developing. But let's now take it all the way back to its name, Project Arrow. It's no coincidence. It's called Arrow because of the 1957, debacle, if you want to be gentle with it, of Canada cancelling the Avro Aero project, the supersonic jet fighter that was being developed and was cancelled by Prime Minister Diefenbaker. And so we felt the ball was dropped immensely. If you follow that story closely, you'll realize that a number of engineers and technicians from the Avro Aero went south of the border and helped to put people on the moon. And a group of them went across the puddle to the UK and helped to build Concorde for the British. And so we missed out. We missed out on both. So for us, it's enough of being nearly there. We feel Project Arrow will be a landmark project which showcases the best of the best here in Canada. And we're super excited. It's the kind of stuff that keeps me up 7 days a week, my friend.
That's awesome. I love that. I love the kind of the motivation behind the project, how all encompassing it is, the major players you guys have been able to engage and get involved in what is hopefully, like you said, a landmark project for the automotive industry, specifically in Canada. That's fantastic. I'm not sure if the Canadian government knows you're putting a bit of a finger in the eye about the project being canceled some 50 or 60 years ago, but that's okay. What they don't know isn't going to hurt them.
No, they do know as well. If you know anything about Flavio Volpe, the president, he's very, very vocal. And we've been very clear about it. We've had conversations, and we are fortunate. It does look like the federal government are going to be partners. The provincial government has already stepped up here in Ontario. The province of Quebec are looking to be partners as well. So listen, we're agnostic when it comes to the provinces. We are a nationwide association. And the challenge has always been, Jared, for obvious reasons, auto is very Ontario-centric. And so we've been working and pleading with companies that are in British Columbia, Alberta, Nova Scotia, and Quebec to say, hey, if you've got your tech and you've got talent, then we're happy to try and bring you onto the project. Because, for us, it's to try and promote the whole of Canada. And, the reason we're doing this, and kind of alludes to a point we made earlier, today your car has a lot more to do with this thing in my hand than a mechanical vehicle from the 1990s. A car today is a technology platform. And if you see it that way, you'll understand where things are going with the likes of Tesla and Rivian and all these new EV startups who are really tech companies. They don't call themselves auto companies.
Yeah, I love that. I love the last point you made there. They are tech companies, and the more and more that vehicle becomes integrated with your smartphone, the dependency that smartphone has on connectivity to the network, the more that I think people see the vehicle not as just something that takes them to and fro. It's a piece of technology, and it's very dependent on all of these networks talking to each other, and a ton of tech that goes into the actual manufacturing and the function of the vehicle itself, which is why, compares we regard ourselves as being so important to the actual life cycle of a vehicle owner, is that, at some point, statistically speaking, every decade or so, you are going to be involved in a collision, right? And if you are driving, a piece of tech, not just an '03 Maxima like me, there's going to be a level of expertise and a level of training and skill required to repair that piece of technology that you don't want to leave to just anybody. You really need to have the schooling and the tools and the equipment to be able to repair that piece of tech properly.
So let's have a conversation about the collision sector now regarding it being a piece of tech. So beyond the shell, beyond the skin of a vehicle, look, being rear-ended by a car 5 years ago meant it's if you want to do it outside of insurance, it was like a $2,000 and it should cover my costs. You can rear end a car today, not a Tesla, but an Audi, and be ready to prepare to pay $10,000 potentially, because no longer is that just a plastic fascia or a bumper. There are ultrasonic units built into it. There is probably some other technology like an ECU and an electric control unit sitting just behind it. So when you get rear-ended, it suddenly shoots the value of that up. So yes, there may be a loss of some of that 10,000. I'm sorry, the skin of the vehicle. But I would implore the collision sector to really be embracing technology, where there is a disruption coming, for less accidents. I think there is, maybe there's a transition opportunity here to be able to support when there are glitches, when there is computer, failures. And so, our mechanic shops have changed over the past 2-3 decades as it is. Today, you go in, boom, the OBD2 port, they've got that little computer and they're running the diagnosis. They didn't used to do that. It used to be Fred who knew the sound of every engine. He knew what was wrong with that. Oh, your fourth cylinder isn't firing the way it should. And so there have been transitions happening. So I think we just need to kind of, step back and say, well, okay, what are the opportunities here? And I think the opportunities are recognizing, as you just said as well, that a vehicle today is a technology platform. So how can we look at, supporting the technology that's on the vehicle in a collision?
Yeah, I love it. And shout outs to our friends Fred, our friends Fred out there. It's nothing on you. It's just an example. Love us some Freds in the collision industry.
Absolutely.
So I want to jump back really quickly because we kind of transitioned away from Project Arrow, but I want to make sure it gets its due. So you talked a lot about the collaborative effort that it is, right? It is a national project, and you've got some huge players that are involved, and I think that's amazing. Talk about the funding if you can just a little bit. Like, is this government funded? Is it at the municipal level? Is it at the provincial level? Federal? How did the project kind of get off the ground? There's a pun. When it comes to who's kind of footing the bill.
So we're fortunate enough to be working on a project with the province of Ontario, and we're looking at repurposing some of that funding to go towards Project Arrow, because it really is just the gradual growth of that original project into Project Arrow. But because because of the costs, we do expect it to be able to build. Not only are you, it's not like we're giving all of this to a company that builds prototype cars. And there are multiple companies in Michigan that do this. When you suddenly have to work with, we did an RFP process, a request for proposal process, which was on our website, on the projectarrow.ca website. So a company anywhere in Canada, and really the condition is we want Canadian companies, but if you are an international company that has presence in Canada, you could qualify. We're not being that naive to say, no, every part, every nut and bolt, every semiconductor and every chip on that vehicle has to be made in Canada. And so the RFP process brought forth just over 300 companies that are interested. And we are working with the federal government, and we do hope to be provided funding from the federal government as well. So, it's really it's a provincial-led, federal government-led initiative. But we're also expecting, if you're coming on as a major partner, then don't be billing us the way you would expect to bill. We would expect to receive, you may receive a percentage to cover some of your costs, but we expect a lot of your support to be in kind.
That's great. That's I think that's the right way to do it, and I hope that it certainly comes to fruition that way. Um, Colin, this has been a fantastic discussion. I want to give you the opportunity to talk about anything that maybe we didn't mention specifically about the APMA or about Project Arrow. I think that everybody's excited to hear about it. When is it coming out? Where's the launch tour starting? Where can we find more information? Anything else that you want to include about the project?
So we've been very fond. Thanks, Jared. We've been very fond of the CES team, and we've been an integral partner there for a few years. So we do expect to make another announcement around Project Arrow next January 2022, and then we do hope to complete the complete engineering of that vehicle by the end of next calendar year. So January 2023 is when we're hoping to officially unveil Project Arrow and all of its partners at CES. And then it begins its world tour. 2023 will be throughout North America. Towards the end of the year, we do expect it to go across to Europe. And then 2023, 2024, it goes through Europe and then off to Asia, to places like India and China. Again, it's a demonstration vehicle. It's going to now demonstrate the best of. And trust me, if we go through a number of these partners and suppliers and the technology that they're bringing forth, it is very cutting edge. We're doing something very unique with our vehicle. Yes, it's going to be level 3 autonomous at a minimum, but we're also adding in what we call the vehicle as a caregiver. So if this is a semi-autonomous or an autonomous vehicle after 2025, then you'd expect caregiving to continue from where the person leaves as they're being transported in the vehicle and where they go to. And so vehicle as a caregiver is definitely a Canadian initiative, and we're excited about the technology that's going to support that as well.
That's fantastic. I can't thank you enough for taking the time with us today. We are coming up on the checkered flag. Before we dive out of here, I have to ask, do you want to play Fast Five?
Let's do it.
What are you smiling about?
Dude, I almost had you.
You almost had me. You never had me. You never had your car.
We love the Fast and the Furious movie franchise. Fast Five is the first one with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Fan club is managed by me, so obvious reasons there. It's just the most entertaining one, and it's right before they jump the shark and get into stuff that's totally unrealistic, even though driving empty bank vaults around the streets of Brazil with souped up Dodge Chargers is a little bit of a stretch. It's still fun to watch. So it's 5 car related questions. Answer them as fast as you can. You all set?
Let's do it.
On your mark, set, go. What was the first car you learned to drive in?
1974 Volkswagen Beetle.
Favorite song to listen to on a road trip?
Anything by Mumford & Sons.
Favorite food to eat in the car?
A burrito from Taco Bell.
Nickname of the car you're driving now?
Tesla.
Favorite car from a TV show or movie?
Kit, Knight Rider.
Oh wow, time. That's definitely in first place. We'll make sure we put that up on the leaderboard. You can check that out at fromtheframeup.ca. We're coming up on the checkered flag. Any last shout outs that you want to make?
Anybody want to know a little bit more about the APMA, please visit apma.ca. Project Arrow has its own website, projectarrow.ca. And Jared, I want to say a big thank you to you for inviting me on. And, you're a phenomenal host, asked some phenomenal questions. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much for coming on. You're a fantastic guest. We appreciate it. Colin Singh Dhillon, the Chief Technical Officer at the Automotive Parts Manufacturing Association. Check it out at apma.ca. Thank you much for joining us, sir. Check us out at fromtheframeup.ca. That's it. That's all.